Welcome to this webinar. This webinar is going to be on derivatives. Right? Derivatives have become extremely popular in today's day and time. Right? There's massive increase in volume, even on the Indian markets. Now, what is a derivative? The essential question that we need to ask is, what is a derivative? Derivatives are investments that derive their value from some underlying quantity. Now, it's usually a security. It could be a stock, it could be a bond, it could be a commodity, it could be even interest rate futures that you have. Right? Now, primarily there are three types of derivative instruments that we normally use. One is a forward contract, the second is a futures contract, and the third is a option. Right? There is a fourth contract, which is swaps, which is normally used by institutional players and mostly relate to in terms of cash flows with regard to interest rates or repayment of principal, primarily because of floating and fixed rate of interest. So that enabled the two players to exchange their cash flows. But what is popularly used is basically forwards, futures, and options. Now, forwards is mostly a customized contract, right? And it is an arrangement between two private parties. It's not actively traded in the market. So, for example, A and B. For example, A would like to purchase a particular commodity at a given price and would obviously need some amount of foreign currency at a later point of time. Now, instead of exposing himself to exchange rate risk, maybe 3 months or 4 months down the line, what he chooses to do, he may enter into a forward contract with the person that, okay, I would like a certain amount of foreign currency at this particular price. Now, what happens in a forward contract, because it is a customized contract, right, it is something between two parties, so there is always counterparty risk, and it has to be exercised. Right? There is no option of not exercising it, but there is a certain amount of counterparty risk, and so therefore they are illiquid, right? And it cannot be traded on any exchange. Now, a futures contract is very much like a forward contract, except that it is traded on a exchange. Now, there is a clearing house which takes the responsibility of the counterparty risk. That in case the buyer of the futures refuses to honor his or her commitment, the the exchange decides to honor the risk and then tries to take it from the buyer, that recovers the money from the buyer, right? Now, how does a future basically work, right? A future works in terms of there is a particular contract, right, and there is the contract size, price, quantity, the quality. In terms of a commodity, there will be a delivery location and a delivery date. Okay. Now, there are in terms of there will be a buyer and a seller on an option. Okay. Now, for example, let's say we assume that we take a futures option on, let's say, a stock index. Now, stock index is that at a particular size of the contract. Let's say, for example, Nifty, the size of the contract is 200. So, depending on whatever the price of the Nifty is, let's assuming it is 4,000, right? So, 4,000 into 200, that is the size of the contract. There is a certain amount of margin that is paid. Okay. Let's say assume that the margin is 10%. So, 4,000 into 200 into 0.10, that is the amount of margin that has to be paid, right? For example, let's assume that the stock index is at a price of 4,000, 200 contracts, right? So, 8 and 10% margin of this. So, he has to give only 80,000 rupees as margin. Okay. Now, as and when at that particular end of the particular futures. Now, there are three types of futures: 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months. Right. Now, depending on whatever futures he takes, now he can a particular future. The person can be either long on the future or can be short on the future. When I say long on the future, that at a particular strike price, he buys the future contract. When I say short, at a particular futures price in the future, he goes short on the future, right? Now, for example, in this case, right, the strike price is 4,000 rupees, right? So that means if the buyer is long on the future, he is under obligation that he has to buy the futures at rupees 4,000. Okay. Now, then let's say he's bought the futures for 3 months. Okay, the time is for 3 months. Okay. Now, at the end of 3 months, right, there will be yet another forward contract. Okay, another futures contract and then we will figure out whether he is going to make a gain or a loss. Okay. Now let's assume that at the end of that 3-month period, the spot price at that moment of time is 4,250. Right? If the price is 4,250, in that case, the buyer of the option, right, he will buy it at 4,000 and immediately enter into an offsetting transaction, and he can sell it for 4,250, because as I said, in most cases in the futures contract, and they can be settled in 2 ways. Either they are cash settled, or you make a offsetting trade, or you give delivery of the goods or whatever security that is in question. Okay. Now in commodities, you have options of both in terms of cash settled, right, or offsetting, or in terms of even of delivery of goods. But financial futures mostly are either settled by cash or by entering into offsetting positions. In 9 out of 10 times, they will be usually settled by having an offsetting position rather than having cash settlement. Right? So in this case, what will happen is that the buyer of the option, he has a 4,000, right? He can immediately sell it for 4,250. So he actually makes a gain of 250 into 200. That is, if you look at this, he's actually made a profit of 50,000 or 80,000, right? Because the margin that he has actually put up is only 80,000. So because of the change in price from 4,000 to 4,250 into whatever 200 contracts that he has, size of the contract, right? He's actually made up a profit of 50,000 divided by 80,000. Now, in this case, of course, when we have said go long or short on the futures, right? A person who had gone short on the futures would have suffered a loss, because he will sell it at 4,000, right? He has been obligated to sell it at 4,000, and he would have had to buy it at 4,250. So, in this case, the seller of the future, the person who has gone short on the futures, would have suffered a loss. Now, what is the advantage of a futures contract? Now, there are actually 2 types of players who are in the futures market. One, of course, is basically the speculators, and the second problem is the hedgers. Okay, there is a third class which you say that is the arbiters, right? And we will not discuss that at this point in time, because they are only exploiting the differences between the cash and the futures market. What we are mainly concerned is with 2 classes. One is the hedgers and the speculators. Okay? Now, if you are a speculator, right, which means that you don't have the delivery of the particular security in question, right? You are only buying futures or selling futures without having the particular underlying security at hand. So in this case, as I said in this example, the guy who has bought a futures contract at 4,000, right? And he is in a good position. The futures contract goes to 4,250, so he makes a profit. But what if the situation had been that he had bought it at 4,000, and let's say the price goes to 3,800. So in that case, he would have made a loss of 200 into 40,000. Right? Now, in that case, because he does not have the particular security in question, therefore, it is for him, it is purely speculative. Right? In this case, he doesn't hold the particular underlying security. But in case of a hedging, right, one would hold a security in question, and that enables you to manage your losses. Now, the strategy for a hedger would have been that if you are long on the particular security, let's assume that you are long on the security, then in that case, on the futures contract, one will be short. Right? If you are short on the security, one would be long on the future. Right? Now, for example, let's say there is a particular person who buys, cultivates wheat. Okay, and at a point of time, let's say 3 months, right, the wheat needs to be sold. Right? Now he expects that the price of wheat is, let's say, going to be let's say 10 rupees a kilo. Okay, right? Or let's say let's do it by quintal, right? So that's the quintal 100 into 10, so it's 1,000 rupees. Now this is the price that he is expecting, right? So 1,000 rupees per quintal. Right? This is the price he is expecting, 1,000 rupees by quintal. Now this is the price that he would want, because he has covered all his raw material costs, cost of cultivation, whatever his personal expenses, etc. So he is expecting a price of 1,000 rupees a quintal. Obviously, he would want to be in a situation that he would get 1,000 rupees per quintal. Now he is long on the particular commodity, in this case wheat, right? He is long on the particular commodity, so he has 100 kilos, right, each for 10 rupees, right? So the price is 1000. What he will do is basically enter into a futures contract wherein he will be short on the futures. So what he will be doing, when you say short, he will particularly sell the futures at a particular price, right? Now at a point of time, right, the futures price and the spot price should have some relation with it. So assuming that, let's say he goes, let's say on the futures contract he goes short and he decided to sell it at, let's say, 1000. Right? He enters into a futures price and he sells it at 1000. Okay? Now, in case, right, in case the price of the futures goes up, right? For example, right, the price of the wheat goes up, instead it becomes 12 rupees, right? In that case, right, he has 100 kilos, right? He is in the spot market, he is able to sell it at 1200, right? In the futures market, since he is short on it, he makes a 200, right? Because he will have to buy it at 1200, right? In this case, he makes a 200 loss. So the 200 gain on the spot market is offset by the 200 gain in the futures market. In the opposite way, transaction, assuming that the price had gone up to, let's say, 8, right? So in this case, in the spot market, he gets 800 bucks, right? And he suffers a loss of 200 rupees. But this loss is made up by the gain in the futures market because he sells it at 1000, right? And he is able to buy and enter into an offsetting transaction at 800. Either he can deliver his produce at 800, right? So in that case, that 200 loss that he makes in the spot market, he is able to offset by the futures. So in this case, a hedging transaction works in case of a futures market. Now suppose in this case, let's assume that now he is not long on the particular security, he is short on the particular security, right? So if he is short on the security, he needs to buy, let's say again, let's say it is a particular company which is into branded wheat, okay, and therefore he needs to particularly buy some 100 quintals, right, or 100 kilos at, let's say, rupees 10 again, that's 1000, okay. So he enters into a futures contract, okay. When he enters into a futures contract, right, so in this case he is short on the security, so therefore he will be long on the futures, he will buy it, okay. So he enters into that, which is at 1000, okay. Now what happens if there is an increase in price, right? Now if there is an increase in price, let's assume that the price goes to 12 rupees per kilo. In that case, this would become 1200, so he will make a, since, right, he is long on the futures, right, so he is bought it at 1000 and he can sell it at 1200, he is made a 200 gain on the futures, right. But in this case, in the spot market, he has made a loss of 200 because instead of 1000, he has had to spend 1200 to buy that 100 kilos of wheat, right. So in this case, he has made a loss of 200. So loss of 200 in the spot market is made up by the gain in the futures market. If on the other hand, let's assume that the price had gone down to, let's say, 8 rupees, right? So in this case, he buys it at 1000, right? Sells it at 800 in the futures market. He makes a 200 loss out here in the futures market, but right, he is able to buy wheat at 800 instead of the 1000. So he makes a 200 gain in the spot market, but a 200 loss in the futures market. So effectively, in a hedging strategy, right, what happens is that by using a hedge, right, the gains or losses on the spot market is effectively hedged in the futures market. Now the question is that whether or not can you completely hedge your position. Now it is very difficult to completely hedge your position because to create a perfect hedge you need the size of the contract which just completely meets the kind of a risk exposure that you have. Now because they are customized contracts, right, it is very difficult to have a complete hedge in a futures market, because as I said that the size of the contract is limited, right? So you need to buy in multiples. For example, in a Nifty, right, you will have the size of the contract is 200. So everything can be only in multiples of 200, right? So to that extent, you may not be able to create a perfect hedge, but an imperfect hedge, and so you can quite effectively be able to hedge your position, right? Okay. Now, the second thing is, how would you price a futures contract? Okay. Now, going by simple time value examples, suppose again let's take the other thing. It says 100 kilos of wheat, right? 1 kilo of wheat and 10 rupees is the price, right? Now, this 1000, right, in a futures contract, suppose I enter into a buy contract, which means I go long on the particular futures, right? Now, when I go long on the particular futures, I am supposed to give that 1000 rupees a particular, after a particular period, that is, let's say after 2 months or 1 month or 3 months, right? So I am supposed to give 1000 rupees only at a particular time, which is in future, right? So obviously there is a time value that is attached to it, right? So in that case, whatever is a fair price of a future depends on the rate of interest, the risk-free rate of interest. So depending on the spot market, 1 plus R to the power of T, right? The fair price of a future should be actually S into 1 plus R to the power of T, where R is the risk-free rate of return and the T is the time value, right? So example, if the risk-free rate of return is, let's say 6%, and let's say the spot market is, let's say 1000, then in that case 1.05, and suppose we have purchased a 3-month futures contract, so this would be 3 by 12, right? So 1000 into 1.05 to the power of 0.25. That would be the fair price of a future. Now, normally what we do is, here in this case, we have taken an explicit 1 plus R, which is in a particular 3-month period. Suppose if I had to say that I was continuously compounding it, in that case, the formula would become SERT, right? Where E is the exponential, right? And R is the rate of interest, risk-free rate of interest, and T is the time to expiration, right? The value of E is 2.7128, right? So let's assume the spot market is 1000 into 2.7128 to the power of R, whatever is 0.05, into time is 3 upon 12, right? So accordingly, I would be able to find out the price of the future, right? Now here in this case, what we have discussed is a basic financial future, where the only thing that we are considering is in terms of the rate of interest. Now suppose there was a commodity that we were looking at. In case of a commodity, then there would have been some storage cost as well, right? So in that case, the formula would have changed to some amount, right? In this case, it would have been S plus U, right? Where U is the carrying on the storage cost, right? If it's continuously compounded, into E R T, right? Sometimes if you are expressing the storage cost as a percentage of the spot price, in that case it would have been S E R plus U to the power of S E to the power R plus U to the power of into T, so not to the power, E R plus U into T, if you had considered the storage cost as a percentage of the spot price, right? So therefore, in terms of rate of interest, then you would have added it to the R. But most of the times we add it to the particular spot price, whatever is the particular carrying cost in terms of that, and find the exponent, right? You can take a particular example, right? For example, let's say we had to buy, let's say 7 kilos, or let's say 100 kilos of bananas, let's say one banana is, let's say, rupees 20 per kilo, right? So in this case, this is a particular spot price, and let's say the rate of interest is 5% per annum, right? And this is the risk-free rate of return. And let's say the storage costs of banana is, let's say, 2 rupees per kilo, right? So S is what? And suppose I am talking about 100 kilos. So 100 into 20 spot price, right? 100 into 20, right? Because I am talking about 100 kilos and kilo price is 20 rupees per kilo. Plus the storage cost is 2 rupees per kilo. So 100 into 2, 200. E, R is 0.05, and let's say I'm talking about a 3-month period, and that is how I would determine my futures price. Right? Right. Now this is all about basically about futures. Right?